The landscapes of Manali suggest an isolated tranquility, but these Himalayan valleys have a history of being aggressively hostile to those who don't belong. This trip was a desperate attempt to stabilize their friend, Samay. 3 months earlier, his younger brother died in a car crash during a school trip. Samay was drowning in that grief, and his friends believed the mountain air might act as a psychological reset. Their hotel receptionist provided a specific warning: stay away from Rohtang Pass after 6 p.m. He pointed out that Rohtang literally means Valley of Death, and local tradition speaks of a deceptive, predatory shadow that actively hunts the pass once the sun sets. Modern travelers usually dismiss these warnings as tourist traps or primitive superstitions. The group laughed at the receptionist's advice, prioritizing their schedule over local survival lore. Driving into an isolated, high-altitude pass after dark is a physical risk. Doing so while carrying a massive, unresolved emotional trauma provides a distinct advantage to anything waiting in those shadows. Night brought a blinding, high-altitude fog that erased the horizon. Visibility dropped so low the driver was forced into a vulnerable 30-kilometer-per-hour crawl. Then, the geography itself became impossible. Over nearly an hour of driving, the group passed the same Manali 28 km milestone 3 separate times. They had transitioned from a physical road into a spatial loop. Within this loop, the passengers experienced a psychological fracturing. The entity projected different images simultaneously. One saw an old man, another a child with a toy, and the driver a black horse. While the others panicked, Samay became eerily calm. He sat transfixed, repeatedly insisting to his friends that someone on the road needed their help. By showing each person a different image, the entity gathered data on their individual reactions. This diagram illustrates how the entity systematically pings the group, testing each person, or node, until it identifies the one whose psychological armor is already compromised. These supernatural loops function as testing grounds. They aren't designed to trap a group forever, but to find the single easiest point of entry. Once the target was identified, the entity manifested physically. A battered 15-year-old boy appeared, maintaining an effortless, steady walking pace alongside the car while it moved at 40 kilometers per hour. The entity discarded the random hallucinations and refined its projection. It now mirrored the exact age and injured state of Samay's deceased brother. The breach happened immediately. Overwhelmed by the desire to save the brother he had already lost, Samay fought the car's central locking system and forced his window open. He looked back and waved at the figure in the fog. That gesture served as a formal invitation, allowing the entity to transition from the road into the car. This encounter demonstrates how grief can be weaponized. It manipulates the survivor into actively dismantling their own safety protocols for the sake of a ghost. At 3:30 a.m. in their hotel room, the group found Samay standing before a mirror. He was singing a childhood lullaby with a terrifying, wide-eyed grin, his neck covered in fresh choke marks. A local pundit diagnosed the situation the following morning. The boy on the road was never Samay's brother. It was a predatory spirit using a familiar memory as a disguise. To understand spiritual parasitism, most possess a natural psychological barrier preventing hostile influences from taking root. The entity uses a Trojan horse strategy. Adopting a lost loved one's signature, it tricks the victim into lowering their defenses, allowing the parasite to enter completely undetected. Purging this parasite required a violent physical reaction. During the Pandit's ritual, Samay vomited a thick, black liquid, the literal expulsion of the entity that had anchored itself to his trauma. Supernatural folklore serves as a coded warning system. It teaches us that deeply unresolved trauma provides the specific psychological access point these entities require to bypass our natural defenses.